Horny but horrified. Say it again. Horny but horrified. Hello and welcome back to the Book Club podcast, where I dive into and beyond the pages in front of me. I'm your host, Matt from Ohio, and recently I finished reading the book Wicked Lovers of Time by Sara Samuels, and today I'm reviewing it. What is this book even about? Well, let's hear. Wicked Lovers of Time by Sara Samuels is the fourth novel in the Blade of Shadows series, where individuals born in complete darkness during a solar eclipse can manipulate time, but they're also born with a darkness that hunts them and seeks to raise hell across time itself. And then obviously the Timeborn has to destroy the darkness. Anyhow, Wicked Lovers of Time was originally published in August of 2024. It's a dark and spicy fantasy. The ebook version I read clocks in somewhere around 550 pages. I read it in 4 days, but I strongly suggest that you take anywhere from a week to even 2 weeks to read this one. And I'll get more on that later. The fourth installment is a bit of a departure from the main plot that we've been reading, which follows Olivia and Roman. Instead, this novel follows the story of Balthazar, who is the darkness that has been hunting Olivia and Roman, as well as, and it follows Alina, Olivia's mother, who, if you recall from the first book, was murdered by Balthazar. This book tells their story, how they met, how they had an extremely turbulent and tumultuous and sexy relationship, all across time. At least until it all comes crashing down when Balthazar unalives Alina, just like in book one. What do I think of the book? I loved this book. I loved it. From a writing standpoint, I think it's amazingly well architected and written. I mean, listen, it tells a story that for all intents and purposes, we already know. Alina and Balthazar have a sexy relationship, and in the end, Balthazar offs Alina. We know that story. You're not really sure of how the story starts, but have been given enough hints of the middle of it that you kind of feel like you know what's going on. And we all watched the end of the story at the beginning of book one. But you don't know the story at all. And isn't that just an amazing execution of writing and rhetoric? Tell me I'm wrong. But most people aren't going to read this thing and go, oh, that was really well written. They're just, how do I feel, right? So from a reading experience standpoint, listen, this book definitely has more spicy scenes and more dark scenes than, maybe the first 3 books put together. And this book has plot twists that can rival Timebound. It is so jam-packed. I think, if I'm being honest, the most adequate way to describe this book and to describe my own reading experience of this book, horny and horrified. That's it. How does this book compare to the other books in the series? Another good way to review this book. I think I'm a bit of an outlier when I answer this question. From what I've gathered, this is many people's favorite novel in the series. But for me, Wicked Lovers of Time is better than Timeborn, but it's not as good as Timebound. In my mind, it is right there on par with Darkness of Time. And I'll be frank, still nothing has surpassed the prequel Rise of the Shadow Lords. Wicked Lovers of Time is a solid novel, It's a solid addition to the series, but personally, it's not my favorite in the series. All that being said, I rated this a solid 4.25, something like that. Sort of in the same ballpark as Darkness and Timebound. But as I say in every book review I do ever, star ratings are stupid and they don't mean anything. So we're going to get into some details that'll really actually explain the review and rating. Usually, to explain my review, I like to follow kind of a format that's like things I didn't really like, things that made me go, and things that I thought the book did really, really well. But I found that almost impossible for this book. Very, very extremely difficult because so many of the things that are done really well left me feeling not okay. You know what I mean? So instead, I think I want to talk about various aspects of Wicked Lovers that contributed to my rating and review, things that really made me think, they really made me feel like while I was reading the book and even now, a week after I finished it, right? Let's start with the idea of dark fantasy. This book is marketed as darker than the rest of the series. And that's the expectation I had and you'll have when you start reading this. Let's get this straight. Dark fantasy is not horror, right? When I think of dark, I think of intensity, I think of viscerality, I think of intrinsic alterations due to trauma. I do not think of horror, right? Horror exists simply to be scary. And that's fine. That's fine, but it is not dark fantasy. And I'll stop on that rant because if you want more of my unabridged thoughts on dark fantasy, I'll link a video here, down below, wherever, right? Anyway, the dark fantasy portion of this novel is, in my opinion, on a very similar intensity level as Darkness of Time. And I don't think that Wicked Lovers goes darker than that. It's about the same level of dark, which, albeit, is pretty damn dark. I think we can say that there are more dark moments in book 4, but the dark moments themselves aren't more intensely dark. They're just more numerous, right? Wicked Lovers does have more horror elements, though, and is therefore it's scarier as opposed to darker. At least this is my opinion, and I'm sure lots of people will disagree with me. Balthazar himself is a pretty goddamn scary dude and disgusting, if I might say so. But I think more than that, Alina's acceptance and horniness for the scary and disgusting parts of Balthazar is even more scary and disgusting. Like, I don't want to spoil anything, but like, Balthazar transforms and shows his true, despicable, maggot-laden self. But like, again, part of me would argue that this isn't just, it's not dark. It's like, it's more horror than darkness. Maybe the darkness comes from the fact that Alina is so into it. Anyhow, the question becomes, in the context of the story, how could this book actually be darker? That's what I was asking myself when I decided that it's not actually more intensely dark than the rest of the series. How could it be darker, right? Well, here's what I've come up with. The sex could be nothing more than a constant question of rape, right? The relationship between Balthazar and Alina could be physically abusive. The book could add in more scenes of torture, with extraneous characters that would, but like that would take away from the relationship being developed between Alina and Balthazar. Like all of those things would make the book darker, but I also think that they would make the book worse. And I'm glad Sara Samuels didn't do those things, right? Um, I wouldn't classify this book as darker. I would classify it as more of the dark. We're talking increased quantity as opposed to enhanced quality. And because you're reading darkness so frequently, sometimes I feel like it almost loses a little bit of its impact. Like you have the potential as a reader to go slightly numb. And I think that's part of the reason why I suggest taking your time to read this, giving yourself mental breaks so that then when you read it, all of that shit lands really hard. Similarly, this book is also marketed as the spiciest in the series. So I had that expectation as well, and you'll have that expectation as well. But in my opinion, the spice in this book isn't any spicier than the other books, just like sort of the darkness stuff, right? There's a higher number and frequency of spicy scenes, and there's a lot more than just the one-on-one sex. But I don't think any of the scenes are more passionate or more pornographic. I suppose the book could have focused more on sex. The sex could have been more graphic. We could have gotten more description of how smell, taste, and feel. We could have had more people in the spicy scenes. But I think all of those things, to be fair, would have actually detracted from the book because at the end of the day, sex isn't the focus. The relationship is the focus. Other people aren't the focus. Our main characters are the focus. But our main characters are seemingly obsessed with sex. And I think that's a tough balance to hit. How you have characters that are obsessed with it, so how do you add in more of it without detracting from our characters? And frankly, I think she did it beautifully. Um, I like the consistency and the style. I've said that every single video, and I'm glad there was not a departure from that. But also because of the consistency and style, I wouldn't classify this as spicier. I would classify it as more of the spice. And again, we're talking increased quantity as opposed to enhanced quality. Um, but with the added horror elements, horny but horrified. I'll say it again, horny but horrified. Now, something else that got me thinking is you, like me, might have expectations about what this book is going to be simply due to the fact that this is a mid series prequel. Now, when writing a prequel type story, specifically in the middle of an ongoing series, there is a trap that many authors can fall into, and it is not furthering or enlarging the world. This book avoids that trap. But at the same time, I wish it did a little bit more in some areas. Let me explain what I mean about this trap. If you've read the first 3 books of this series, then you know 2 things for sure. 1, Balthazar offs Alina. 2, Balthazar claims that he and Alina had the sexy relationship, right? And if you've read the first 3 books in the series, you are led to believe 2 things. 1, Olivia's mom is a good guy. 2, Balthazar is an unhinged bad guy. And if you've read the first 3 books in the series, you're also given information that allows you to suspect 3 things, right? 1, Olivia's mom might not actually be completely a good guy. 2, Balthazar might not actually be completely unhinged. And 3, Balthazar might not actually be the big bad of the series, right? The trap of the mid-series prequel occurs when the author only addresses what the reader already knows or what the reader already knows or suspects. That would be kind of a failure in my mind. I mean, like, those things could be confirmed in other ways during the main plot line. So why would you write a dedicated novel for it, right? Well, it's in my estimation that you would write a dedicated novel in order to not just confirm those things, but to flesh out the characters, to expand the world, to make the plot more, or maybe even enhance or expand the magic system. And I found each of those things to be on the forefront of my mind while I was actively reading. Um, and those are the things I want to talk about now. Number one, fleshing out the characters. So yes and no on this one. Uh, our main characters are developed so effectively that I can't tell you who is good and who is bad and who just is. You know, listen, um, our main characters are they're not good guys. They're not good guys, but they do bad things for good reasons. They do good things for bad reasons. They do bad things for bad reasons, and they do depraved things just cuz. So like that's super successful because it takes away the concept of protagonist and antagonist, hero and villain. But at the same time, I was definitely left feeling a little unsettled due to some, how do you say, asymmetrical character depth between Alina and Balthazar. Um, Listen, Balthazar is immaculately fleshed out in this novel. Um, in the second novel, he's sort of unhinged to the point where you can't understand him as a character. You can't even understand him as a trope. He's chaotic evil, but he's also neutral evil, and he seemingly undermines his own plans because evil, right? So you can't understand and you can't predict or understand foreshadowing. It's all messed up. But in this book, he's built he's built out as a person before he's demonized into becoming a villain. He has this rich backstory that informs who he is, why he thinks the way he does, and why he does what he does. His decision making and his actions. I was properly impressed by this guy, and a little bit um, self-hating in regards to the fact that I was rooting for him from time to time. One would assume that Alina should be written similarly, but Alina doesn't have quite the same level of backstory. Listen, do things happen along the way that change her and give her motivation as a character? Sure. But what's the story before she decides to go bad? Like, I don't know. I don't think you know. The only person that really knows is Sara Samuels, or perhaps this is something that we learn in later books, fingers crossed. And we find out in book 5, 6, 7, whatever. The book opens with Alina making the decision to cry rape. And it reads very much like the first decision of evil. But we don't know why. What caused Alina to do that? Why? There's no reason behind it other than because Alina's bad. But like, why is Alina attracted to power or darkness? Why does Alina thrive and exult in making her own bad, dark decisions? Why is she such a sexually depraved like being? We don't know why. We know why she continues. We know why she furthers and gets worse or darker, but we don't know why she starts. We know why Balthazar starts. So there's a little bit of an asymmetry there that it was really done. It was from a book as a whole done really well. But but this gets us into the second point of avoiding the prequel trap, which is expanding the plot, world, magic system, whatever. And this, I think, is actually where the saving grace with that character asymmetry I mentioned comes into play. Because as readers, we know this stuff about Balthazar and Alina, but Olivia and Roman do not. And that really puts an awesome twist on the upcoming plot. And this is how the plot gets just hugely expanded, right? In the first three novels, we only have the information of our protagonists. We're left to believe that like the bad guys be bad because they be bad, you know? Moving forward, though, we're going to be thrown back into the perspectives of our protagonists, but with all the baggage of knowing the other side of the coin. So we're going to start questioning our protagonists' motivations and decisions, and it's going to be such a freaking cool thing to read. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to read book 5. Plus, in book 4, we learn all about the bigger 3D chess game that I was so obsessed to figure out back in book 2 or book 3. I don't fully remember, but yeah. So expanding the plot is achieved flawlessly. The magic system, though, feels like it was a little bit of a missed opportunity, if I'm being honest. Listen, Alina has to learn the magic system of time traveling from scratch in this book, right? So we get reinforcement of what we already knew with new people and new perspectives and new information. But what really happens is that the story expands the magic system without expanding the magic system, if that makes sense. Like the new people, the new POV, like the new perspectives and the new information about the magic system doesn't actually add up to produce more information or more magic. It's just more of what we already knew. And at the end of book 3, by the end of book 3, I thought I had found some gaps in the magic system, and I wanted a bit more to kind of close those gaps. But I'm not unhappy with what we got because it was new and it was more. It expanded the magic without expanding the magic. I hope that makes sense. And lastly is world building, and I'll be very quick about world building. Right outside of expanding the plot, introducing new characters, etc. The world itself is really just a backdrop and it's not expanded. But that's also extremely consistent with the series as a whole so far. So I'm actually I'm good with that. So all wrapped up, I'm really happy that this mid-series prequel avoided the mid-series prequel trap. Should you read it? Yes, absolutely. This is a super solid addition to the Blade of Shadows series. And apart from being a fantastic piece of writing, it actually acts as an amazing palate cleanser within the series itself, so that you can continue binging the series without needing to read something else, right? And it also works really well as making as enhancing the rest of the series moving forward. If I could offer a small warning, though, just one. Personally, through the journey of this story, I reached a level of emotional burnout. And it has taken me a week to get to a point where I want to talk about this, right? There are very few breaks in the intensity of this story. Um, Betrayals, sex, horror, darkness, plot twists. Uh, between the frequency of all of those things, at a certain point, I kind of became a little numb to it. So, for full enjoyment, I'm telling you to read this book. I recommend this book. But for full enjoyment, I urge you to read this book over the course of a week, maybe up to 2 weeks, rather than just a mere handful of days. And I also hope that this video explains why, but also aligns your expectations properly for all of those things. That would be my review of Wicked Lovers of Time by Sara Samuels, book 4 of the Blade of Shadows series. And I am going to go ahead and put a bookmark in it for now. As always, let me know what you thought of this book. What went well for you? What did you not like? Do you think my assessment is full of crap? I would love to know what you think. So if you'd like to contact me, work with me, all my contact information is in the description down below, or you can always just leave a comment. So until next time, cheers.